Tom Collum, Never Give Up. Collum Short Stories. By Collum Fairley. On February 10, 1922, President Warren G. Harding introduced the first radio in the White House. This was big news for the nation, but 3 days before would prove to be bigger news for our family. Tom Collum was born to George Willis Collum and Addie Martha Jane Wood, on February 7, 1922. When Addie married George, she had a daughter, Elsie Baxter, from a previous marriage. George W. had 2 children in Mississippi. He left them with their mother, Myrtle Marsh. They were Lola, born in 1910, and Earl, my dad, was born in 1913. Tom was the 3rd child born to George and Addie. Velma was the first child born to them. Riley was 2 years older than Tom. He was an exceptional big brother. Riley and Tom were typical little brothers to Velma and Elsie. Being mischievous was a matter of course for these 2 little boys. When Tom was 2 years old, another little boy joined the family. J.D., James Denver, was born in 1924. Tom had to take on a new persona that he was not accustomed to. He was now a big brother. He squared his little shoulders, set his mind to big brother mode, and enjoyed being someone to look up to. He patterned himself after Riley because he knew that Riley was the best big brother in the world. These 2 girls, now 14, Elsie, and 9, Velma, were on a daily campaign to predict, and possibly avoid the actions of these 3 boys. It was a busy life for this family, but they wouldn't trade it for anything. In 1926, Addie had another boy. Unfortunately, the joy felt in this family was soon replaced with adversity. The little boy named Toy only lived 10 days. This was an emotion that these children were not ready to encounter. Experiencing this emotion, however, was the first step in a long journey for all 3 of these boys. Riley was the biggest brother, so he guided the boys in the right direction. He did not take his job lightly. The advice he gave the boys was considerably more mature than any other 8-year-old. Little J.D., the smallest of the boys, had a feeling of abandonment. Not only did all the family forget about him, but all they talked about was the lost baby. This left Tom in the middle of following big brother, and leading little brother. The 3 boys stayed together and remained united with a larger-than-life love. Only 11 months later, this family was battered with a dreadful hardship that permanently impacted their lives. Their mom was still suffering the loss of the baby. She was weak from exhaustion and fell tragically ill with pneumonia. Her body was too weak to fight, and she lost the battle. On a windy March day in 1927, Addie Martha Jane joined her infant son in heaven. This was the ultimate desperation for 3-year-old J.D., 5-year-old Tom, 7-year-old Riley, 9-year-old Velma, and 14-year-old Elsie. This was the beginning of an emotional life journey affecting these children and many generations to come. Elsie went to live with her dad's people. George and the other children went to live with George's parents in Oklahoma. They didn't stay long, because each child went to stay with relatives. They had several years of this upside-down life. Even though the relatives always did their best to make the children feel loved and welcome, the fierce passion for family was burning inside that nothing or no one could squelch. Riley kept up his intention of leading people the right way. He married Wanda Dempsey in 1941. He became a minister and dedicated his life to raising his children in God's way. Whether it was because of, or in spite of, his childhood, Riley raised a wonderful family with God in the center. J.D. carried his scars for life. Because of his childhood with his family, or lack thereof, J.D. was always a small person. He spent more time with George Willis than the other boys did. The 1940 census shows that J.D., at 16, and his dad lived alone in Oklahoma. It was during that time that J.D. had to work so hard to get something to eat and to have milk to drink. When he reached the age of 18, J.D. tried to join the army, but they turned him down. He weighed less than 100 pounds, so they didn't believe he was mature enough. J.D. married Maxine Nelson. They had 2 girls and 4 boys. He was always physically small in stature, but this man was a very big man, to overcome the hardships he endured, then raise a wonderful family. The middle son, Tom, carried an incredible aspiration to pull everyone together. Tom felt that nothing in the world was as strong as family. He still relied on the advice from his older brother, he still held on to the pain he saw so many times in the eyes of his younger brother. He also found out that there were 2 children by his father before the marriage of his mom and dad. The deep enthusiasm to put his family back together was an excessive driving force. This energy compelled Tom to dedicate his entire life to putting all his siblings back together while he raised his own family. Soon Tom was married to Essie Dunn, with 2 beautiful girls. He wanted more than anything to have his girls, Sharon and Betty, to know their relatives. His girls were small when Tom and Essie brought George Willis to their home. They fed and cared for him until his death in 1952. Betty remembers carrying him biscuits and gravy, and eggs and bacon. She said she doesn't remember her grandpa ever speaking to her, but she remembered that he was always sickly. More than 30 years ago, Tom started doing research to find all his siblings so he could put them back together. It was a great undertaking, but his dedication drove him to keep going. When he located my part of the family in Mississippi, Tom recruited my brother James and me to do research with him. Tom also traveled locally to cemeteries in his area. He made a list of all relatives interred without a proper marker. He saved his money and had markers made for all who did not have one. He had them all loaded on a trailer and personally set the headstones in place himself. Before Facebook, the internet, Twitter, and emails, the research was really slow and complicated. There were many letters, snail mail, with many days to wait for responses. Traveling to Jackson, my brother and I would go to the archives and spend the day searching. Oftentimes we only uncovered one piece of information. Tom was thrilled that James and I were willing to put so much effort into the research. We started a Collum reunion in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in the 1970s. Tom and Macy, Tom's second wife, started attending our reunion here, as well as one in Clovis, New Mexico. All the children named his camper Uncle Tom's Cabin. We were thrilled to see Uncle Tom's cabin pulling into the park. Through all his military service in World War II, providing for his family, raising his girls, and working as a local sheriff's deputy, Tom never gave up on his dreams to one day be with all his siblings. He had to work very hard between reunions, in order to take off for that time of the year. He placed great importance on family, though, so it didn't seem like a sacrifice to him. At the reunions, all the bigger boys enjoyed sitting around their Uncle Tom as he regaled them with tales of yesteryear. I'm certain that he was the hero in each tale of secrecy. Each story seemed to have a few spots of humor because we could hear the boys laugh out loud in unison during the stories. I never knew what the stories were about. And I never asked. All the sacrifices, endless hours of research, phone calls, and many pieces of registered mail kept him busy for many years. In July 1979, though, all the work paid off, Tom's dream came true. All of the siblings were together in Bartlesville, Oklahoma at Tom's home. This was the only time these siblings were all together. Tom had several years after this to enjoy all his siblings. He became acquainted with the children and grandchildren of his siblings. He fulfilled his vision of having them all together. He also knew that the research was in good hands. I wish he could know about all the research now. We have come so far since computers and the internet. He would also be very thankful for the numerous short stories of our ancestors. Whether he planned it, or whether it was predestined, Thomas Tom Collum outlived all his siblings. Perhaps he wanted to see them off and to know all the others were okay. No, he couldn't see through walls, but he could see through generations. He gave us the craving to learn about our ancestors. He taught us to love and respect those who went before us, and those we share our lives with today. No, he didn't wear a red cape. The red cape belonged to that little 5-year-old teary-eyed boy who watched his siblings each go in different directions. As he wiped the tears, somehow little Tom knew that one day he would have his siblings back together. Thank you, Thomas Tom Collum, for never giving up on your dream.